Hello and welcome to Pagabo Live, our initiative designed to promote knowledge in the public sector. My name's Tom, and over the next hour, we'll be talking about procuring local and the power of SMEs with our panel of industry experts who will introduce themselves now, starting with William Logan.
Yes, thank you, Tom. I'm William Logan, Managing Director of Logan Construction. We're a regional main contractor in the southeast of England, predominantly specialising in healthcare, life sciences, and education sector delivery projects, and that's new build or cut and carve or refurbish. Thank you.
Excellent. Bring in Luke Johnson now.
Thanks, Tom. So, good afternoon. My name is Luke Johnson. I'm a director of Beyond Consult. We are a consultant for the public sector, delivering project management, commercial services, mainly through social housing, but a lot of new build developments and refurbishments as well.
Excellent. And last but by no means least, Charlotte.
Thanks, Tom. Charlotte here from Resolution Interiors. We are a nationally covering but southwest-based design and fit-out specialist covering both public and private sector.
Super. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Today's session is a panel discussion, as usual, on Pagabo Live, and we're going to look at the strategic power of procuring local, net zero, and social value opportunities that come from working with SMEs, and how local government and procurement works in practice. We'd also love it if you could get involved, so feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like using the Q&A box. Should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're on a laptop or if you're on a tablet, you can find it hiding behind the More button. We'll also be running polls throughout today's session to gauge everyone's level of understanding of the topics we're discussing and find out whether there are any areas where further Pagabo Live content could help you. In fact, we have our first poll right here, so if you could fire that up, Matt, and we can look at how knowledgeable people feel around local procurement and working with SMEs. So number 1 being not confident at all, and 4 being very confident. And what normally happens on Pagabo Live is we start quite low with these, and by the end we ask the same question and it's much better. So hopefully no pressure on you as panelists, but we want to see some movement on that. If you could close that poll now, please. Well, the good news is that we're not starting from a complete zero base. So we've got a few people who are relatively comfortable and confident around local procurement and working with SMEs. So a good start there, and hopefully that will help us guide the conversation over the rest of today's session. So we're going to start with, we'll go to you first on this one, Luke, but it'd be good to hear from you on this as well, William. So from your experience, what is the strongest strategic advantage public sector organisations can gain by procuring locally?
It's the knowledge of the local area, which is the main thing for us. So we are aware of planners that work in particular areas. We're aware of particular streets that may be issues of ASB. It's our knowledge of the areas where we're working. So a lot of our team are Midlands based. We work within Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Leicestershire, Rutland, and we know the nuances of those areas. A lot of the time, planning departments move between areas, so we know that particular planner, we know what they're looking for. Going down to sort of that community level, which is the key aspect of delivering any project or social housing, the acceptance of it. We know what's important to the people that we're delivering to. So we know that if we're building in a certain area which has certain political views, various colours of render may cause an issue, which will get more political, which will get more objections to the planning process. It's just having that local knowledge. We know we've got links to PCSOs in Nottingham because we've worked in some tough areas, so we know to link up with PCSOs to get them to increase the amount of watches they do in that area. It's just generally those things, really. We have a built-in knowledge of where we're building and what's important to the people in the community of that particular space where we're working.
Yeah, incredibly important stuff. William, from your experience, what's the strongest strategic advantage from working with a local contractor?
Yeah, I think as Luke said, the local knowledge, but I think there's also a level of engagement and response that clients can really guarantee by procuring locally. And whether that's face-to-face engagement or whether it's with an SME, typically we are a little less rigid than our larger counterparts. And we have that level of agility and discretion where we can act quickly and respond yeah, I think exceptionally well to certainly unforeseen or urgent project requirements that some of our clients have. I think there's also a lot of other positives that we'll probably touch on throughout this webinar today. But when we look at the impact on, obviously, the social value in the community and advantages that we can bring to our areas when procured locally, generally, I'll speak for ourselves, we will procure our supply chain locally as well. So we get that real circular drive and impact throughout the community, not just for the particular business in question. But I think also with the closer, more tight-knit procurement partnerships that we drive, I do feel that there is an enhanced level of quality that our clients receive procuring locally as well. And whether it's human nature or not, inherently we want to be seen as outstanding businesses, build our brand. And by doing that in the local community, there's always that level of prestige and care and attention. Not to say that that doesn't transcend if we're not working locally, but it's certainly enhanced. And I think it's certainly a benefit that that clients can actually receive over and above a number of other things. Yes.
You are right with that, William. So as an example, today I've been to 2 sites to resolve sort of urgent matters that have arisen, and I'm able to be on site within the hour, discuss the situation with the contractor and the client both there, come up with a resolution, and then walk away with the actions to get it formally resolved. Whereas if we were sort of 3 hours away, it just makes it much more difficult. I think a lot of that ability to adapt and be on site and be in positions been lost with sort of the introduction of teams. You're able to bid things a lot further away, and as William says, we do work this further away, but that adaptability of local clients has been sort of the main builder of our business since we started. That support that we provide has helped us grow, and that is because we've got really good local clients that we work with.
Yeah, thanks both. A lot of themes there we'll touch on throughout today's webinar going forward. I'll go to you on this one, Charlotte. So how does working with local SMEs strengthen both project resilience and also those wider community outcomes that we touched on in the previous question?
Knowledge of local supply chain. You've got that direct link into expertise that you can tap into. As what Lucas just said, those local stakeholder relationships play an absolutely critical role here for achieving those kind of wider positive outcomes. Again, kind of tapping on these same themes. I think we're going to come at this a lot today. More responsive supply chains, you can physically get to locations quicker. SMEs reduce that dependence on long response times, traveling to site. You've got that more agile approach. You've got reduced risk of delays. No one can be stuck on the M25 for 3 hours, for example. You've got that greater flex to adapt to conditions. Even when it comes to things like the weather, we've had it with roofing projects. The guys can see that it's actually chucking down, so they won't go to site till a couple of hours later once it's settled down, because they're 2 miles from site. Then it might work in those couple of hours later. So again, you kind of you're not then faced with those abortives or those stand down days. And actually then you don't get the abortive costs either, which again, just that public pound goes a lot further. So being able to take advantage of those local nuances is very, very beneficial. I think as well, playing into what William said, SMEs, or we've certainly found, tend to be really a lot more agile in decision making, more receptive to kind of tailoring solutions that aren't hampered by huge organizational procedures or requisites. Better at rapid problem solving, especially when a much more localized solution is actually needed as well. And again, in consultancy, we do design and build, so we kind of flip between the two. But local knowledge, as you said, knowledge can reduce reapplications of planning, compliance errors. Knowing those little nuggets is absolutely critical when going into an application, especially if you've got a tight turnaround project. Proposing solutions that are kind of like right first time are going to get through the hoops. So super important. And then I mean, it's known, doesn't need to be explained, but keeping that spend local stimulates the local markets, supports the supply chains, keeps the money circulating within the communities, boosting the resilience. And it's a real, we certainly find this anyway, getting that positive buy-in to a project. So sometimes people, we've all seen it, oh, where's that money gone? Getting that positive buy-in, knowing that your mate Bill from around the corner is actually working on the project, or that great company that you've seen down the road. It's a positive for everybody involved in that. People trust that the money's staying local people are benefiting. As a business as well as an organisation for ourselves, when it comes to the talent acquisition, our reputation is important. Being able to proudly say, yeah, we delivered that project is great for talent, and obviously kind of looking at other projects in the future. And I think the final one on that as well, again, coming kind of into social value, we certainly look at national work as well, and you feel like you might make a bit more of a more generic pledge, or that you need to kind of really go and seek out what those social value opportunities are. Whereas when you know the area, you live here or you commute here, you work here, you see it day in, day out, you know what those real positive impacts are, the real community benefits and their priorities, that and any local sensitivities can be accommodated as well. You're not making these kind of national generic pledges. So I think that's super, super important.
I think I completely agree with all the points Charlotte's made. And I think one of the negative points that's always used against SMEs is that we're not resilient, or if we're working with an SME and I don't know, the person working with goes off, as an example, it all falls down. And I always have to argue this case. It's always a very interesting debate that I have with people on this, but quite rightly so, we're probably not as resilient as a bigger company. We haven't got hundreds of people to back us, but we wouldn't be bidding on jobs unless we had the resilience, unless we could actually provide the resource. And if I was to go off, there's somebody underneath me equally as good to deliver. I think because we're smaller, we have to be able to put in the best bid possible for those jobs that we want to win. We're not just scattergunning everything. We're going, this is the job we want, this is how we're going to win it, and we're only going to win it if we can deliver it properly and to the best of our ability. And I think that resilience thing is always it's a very quick don't use an SME because they're not as resilient as us, but actually if we're bidding for that job, we're doing it because we can deliver the best possible product. And I think that's the key bit for me always on that resilience point.
Yeah, I'd agree, Luke, and everything you've said, Charlotte, as well. And I guess it's just going back to that care and attention thing, and what a job means to an SME. And again, speaking from our experiences and similar SME experiences, when you are awarded that contract, when you are put in charge of delivering that job, it inherently means something to the business. It's something that really does carry a level of importance. And there's horses for courses, and of course I think, as you touched on, Luke and Charlotte, there's projects out there that just aren't geared up for the SME, and that's absolutely fine. I think the frustration can be sometimes when we all see projects that are absolutely within our sweet spots, that are absolutely deliverable, that we can absolutely partner with clients and deliver fantastic outcomes. And sometimes you find that you're precluded from even being considered, or just as bad sometimes, that, like you say, some kind of false information or misinterpretation of what an SME can deliver is portrayed at the level of decision making, and we miss out, and that can be frustrating. But I certainly know from our perspective, we've delivered a number of projects that have kind of surprised people, not just in their complexity or their value or size, and I think it's refreshing that them projects that SMEs like ourselves can deliver are hopefully helping to change that kind of tide of thinking, and just open that mind up and that scope to opportunities that are correctly apportioned and available to SMEs.
Brilliant stuff, guys. We'll look at a little more into those kind of procurement routes later on. But let's move on to the next section now. We'll start with another audience poll. So how strongly do you believe in procuring locally enhances strategic outcomes for public sector projects? 1 being not very at all, and 4 being very strongly. So how strongly do you believe that procuring locally enhances strategic outcomes for public sector projects? Just a couple of seconds on that. And if we can close that poll now, please. So a good positive result there. More than half, 53% of attendees believe that procuring locally enhances strategic outcomes for public sector projects. And given the number of local authorities that we have in attendance today, that's a very positive sign so far. We'll just move on to sort of two areas that intertwine quite nicely around net zero and social value now. But starting on net zero first, so in practical terms, how does procuring locally support organisations' net zero ambitions? We'll go to you first on this one, William, but also we'll hear from you, Luke, as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I should predicate that I'm not the a sustainability manager for Logan's, and I don't have that inherent knowledge of all of the terms and conditions. But what I can say is I sit at the top and I make the decisions for the business, and our business plans are fully engrossed and embody our drive and our goals to achieve a net zero carbon footprint in 2045 is our carbon reduction plan. I mean, for our organisations and for a number of our clients that we work with, these are absolutely critical and measured metrics in today's world that I think rightly so for the right objectives exist and we're all working towards. And, as a father and I've got 5 young children, there is inherently an obligation I feel we all have, and I certainly feel to leave the world in a better place than we've found it. And that's really where we're getting to with this net zero goal and the objectives and the drives that we make out there. For clients, what we see a lot of is an ability to, when procured locally, is to really reduce and bring down that embodied carbon footprint that is measured with our construction projects. And predominantly the scope 3 emissions, we've seen dramatic reduction in the carbon impact when procuring locally, and that's for ourselves sending employees and operatives to the site. But more importantly, I think when we procure locally as well, we harvest that benefit of reduction in the carbon output of the project delivery as a whole. There's a number of drives out there and tools available, I think, to clients and to contractors and consultants that do help us actually give tangible measurement and quantitative information to these outputs. And sometimes I can look at it with a kind of skeptical view, if I'm honest, Tom. Sometimes I feel, well, are we trying to make numbers do what we want numbers to do? And I kind of step back from that and I say no, because I can actually see the benefits. The reality is, by procuring locally and material deliveries being local, waste removals going to local recycling areas, our ability to upcycle and reuse materials where available, it really does just enhance the ability to not impose that carbon impact on the world today, and actually do our bit for the world going forward and society. And I think the construction industry has really stepped up to the plate over the last few years. It has become a leading factor in a number of our bids, and from our clients' perspectives, the message we're clearly receiving is that it's important to them as well. And I think we've made huge strides down the road to date, and I think there's a lot more work to do. But I think procuring locally and utilising that local SME supply chain is certainly an initial positive step for clients to realise and progress their own carbon reduction plans and objectives.
Yeah, I second that. I think because I sit in the consultancy side, I've set a lot of those KPIs that William's talking about, which I can imagine sort of can be frustrating at times. And I think actually it's forced everybody to think about how we're delivering. And I think that's one of the main So when our clients are putting out their net zero ambitions, we can be aligning contractors that are working with us, so those delivery partners, to ensure we're meeting those requirements, ensuring that they have the local procurement, ensuring that they have reduced amount of recycling, and considering if they're finishing a demolition project somewhere around the corner, using the scrap of that as the hardcore for the next site. It's just allowing that level of forward thinking to actually take place. And then obviously there's the obvious sort of benefit that we're around the corner. So I have a regular meeting with one of my biggest clients that they all come to my office on a Monday, and I get a soiree of electric bikes, and bikes appear, and we get them charged up for the clients while they're there. And it's just a very different way of working to what we're used to. And if we were national and sort of a lot bigger than that, we wouldn't be able to do that. Everyone would have to be driving down or whatever. And I actually think it's quite nice to see people thinking that way. And as William says, I mean, I certainly haven't got 5 children, and fair play for going that far. But ultimately, I can see that everyone wants to develop things and leave things better for the future. And you can see it actually happening, and people thinking about it and putting measures in place to actually monitor it is important. So no, it's good. It's positive. And I think, the main part of that is being local. We're around the corner. We're encouraging delivery partners to think about people that are around the corner. So everything's being reduced all around. So when you are delivering something, you're working with a contractor who's working with a subcontractor who all live within a relative locality to the actual project. So costs come down as well, ultimately.
Mm. A key takeaway there, William Logan, very busy man, clearly.
Absolutely,
We'll move on to discussing the opportunities for social value within using local suppliers, and we'll go to you on this one, Charlotte. So, where are you seeing the biggest opportunities for local suppliers to drive that measurable social value within public sector projects?
For me, it's honing in again on that local insight. Certainly, some of the examples that from our organisation, that proximity and kind of flexibility and agility that allows an SME to close some of those resource loops and kind of pick out those community benefits. They can innovate a lot faster than national suppliers. So I guess what I'm talking about there is if you have a national contract with a particular waste management service, you are then hamstrung because your company gets the best commercial deal on that. It's not to say that a local provider couldn't provide you with that, but you've got to go to that national account. We can go to a local provider who we had this in a school rip out project down in Wimborne, and one of our guys lived in Bournemouth, and one of our project managers, and he knew of a repurposing and recycling scheme. So all the old furniture that came out, he knew of community groups that could go to. So it's not just then about diverting from landfill, which is obviously one thing, but that whole idea that you can kind of take a double bubble, if you like, really, and ensuring that a lot of those materials go to people who can actually make use of them, and you're not just taking the kind of responsible disposal route. You can get those kind of re-implemented. I think for us, the knowledge of those kind of local reuse and resource recovery programs is really helpful. You often can't get kind of access to the right kind of end user or beneficiaries when you're not familiar with those areas. Living within and networking within an area, you can make those contacts and connections. We've had another one in Bristol where we've ripped out a mezzanine in an industrial unit. It's in perfectly good condition, just doesn't suit the client's purposes. So we then managed to speak to a local organisation that's been donated to them. So they are a benefiting cause. And of course, our client then is not paying for disposal, which is also great. And it's a great PR story for them as well. So I see, a lot of that, if you can get access to the right people, then waste is obviously a huge win all round, really. But then redistribution of like IT equipment and stuff as well. So as again, our organisation, we've got about a 3-year lifespan on a lot of our kit. Our IT company then stripped that back, and we actually donate it. There's a local, it's called the Brimpton Golden Oldies organisation. They're all kind of between 60 and about 120 years old, and they get a lot of our old IT kit. Our IT company repurpose that for them. So they are, and it's lovely. You go up there and you hear about grandma who's been able to talk to her daughter in Australia, but she didn't have Zoom before. So there's some of those bits as well that are kind of less obvious because you're always thinking about what's on site. What about the licenses that you've got and the software you don't use, or the printer that you think's rubbish, but someone just might need for 5 minutes? So I think, like I say, it's having access to those really kind of meaningful, purposeful end users for me. there's then the sustainable logistics through supply chains, etc. But yeah, which is obviously your reduced emissions, your response rates, and all that kind of jazz. But we've talked about that quite a lot already. So yeah, access to local beneficiaries.
Excellent. We'll move on to, we mentioned a little bit earlier, the kind of procurement angle, a little section on that now. And to open that up, we've got another audience poll. So to what extent does local procurement enhance social value outcomes for your organisation? So combining the next question and the previous one. So to what extent does local procurement enhance social value outcomes for your organisation? Low, moderate, high, or very high? Just have another couple of seconds on that poll, please, before closing it. And again, really good positive result. 63% saying that to a high extent that local procurement enhances their social value outcomes. So all really positive things coming out of today's polls, particularly given, as I say, the number of local authorities that we have in attendance. Got the fifth question coming up here, and I'll put this to all three of you, and we'll go to Luke first on this one. So public sector buyers often face that pressure to achieve value for money. How can they benefit the cost efficiencies they need to achieve with the benefits that we've already discussed around choosing local suppliers? So Luke first on this one, and then we'll go to Charlotte and William as well.
It seems like we're sort of saying the same old thing, but I guess ultimately our costs are reduced because we are more local. We're not having to build in all it costs, especially in the consultant areas that we're in. It's time. If somebody has to go to site and that site visit takes a day, we have to then make that allowance in our rates to cover it off. If they can go to site and it's a 1 hour round trip plus the meeting time, actually that time lost travel is reduced, and that's always reflected back to the client. We're always trying to find ways to save the client money, which is why we are competitive in terms of the prices we're putting forward, and ultimately why we're winning a lot more work more local, because we're able to deliver a very good product for much less of the cost, because we can be around the corner. And choosing local will always allow that, and that expands past not just what we're offering, but also by going out to tender. If we went out to tender through the Pagabo portal, for example, and focused on those Midlands contractors, or focused on Midlands or West Midlands or wherever we are as contractors, we know we're going to get a better value off those rather than necessarily the nationals. And sometimes nationals don't even compete for that reason, because they just know. So because of that, we have a good relationship with a lot of the more local main contractors, and have discussions with those guys to ensure that they're going to bid for projects and things. And actually, it's that's the main benefit. Ultimately, it's that's the value. The value comes from local experience, but also cash-wise, time.
Charlotte and William as well, that sort of tally with your experiences?
Yeah, something you just touched on at the end there. I think defining value is really important as well, and that this needs to be based on outcomes. So obviously there's always a commercial in terms of these costs, but when value can be beyond that. So where we've changed from meat to mat, for example, I think there's understanding what that value added could be. So is that improved asset reliability? Is that it's got a longer lifespan? Is it reducing waste? What are some of those value adds that can be added in as well? It's not just all about the commercials. So if our value is that we've got absolutely incredible local stakeholder relationships, or like Luke's been saying with some of his contacts, that's been established over a career. You can't buy that, and you also can't put that in a tender to demonstrate that to somebody. But getting that deep dive local knowledge, that innovation, it gives space for SMEs to offer these kind of smarter solutions. There's obviously the obvious ones, as it were. So local supply chain partners, to your point, Luke, no accommodation, less travel, faster response, less disruption, and all that.
That's the obvious one, isn't it?
Yeah, but and it is important, especially when you're looking at public spend. And I think as well, when you're looking at when there's a tier one contractor who's subcontracting and subcontracting and subcontracting, all of a sudden that project budget of £100,000, there's only 50 grand of it at the end of it actually going into the project, because it's just fees and OHP up and up. And so it's kind of by kind of cutting straight to source, they're getting far more value for their money without changing the scope and without changing the parameters of anything. So that's certainly something I've seen.
Yeah. Williams, that sound familiar as a regional contractor?
It really is, just to echo everything that the guys have said. But ultimately, I think the question's poised in a way that almost says, does an SME bring cost efficiency? And in our experience, we actually absolutely do. And, when paired and marketed against the larger tier one contractors on the right kind of job, we absolutely win hands down on the element of, being the most efficient, cost-effective solution. I think what Charlotte said is really pertinent, and it's important that clients understand what is their value, what are they measuring value against, and obviously the prominent one, which we all know, is pounds and pence. Of course it is, and we'd be ridiculed to say anything else. But we've also all been there before, where value comes in a number of other guises, and I feel SMEs are inherently within their DNA. It's their USP. They can be more cost effective, more cost efficient on the right size of project, of course, but then they also have that inherent value added element, and whether that's that repeat business that we all crave and we all value, that ability to understand a client and deliver their needs, and the relationships that are enhanced and developed over repeat projects, where site managers get to know end users and critical key stakeholders of clients' organisations, and you get you almost get this harmonious ability to develop seamlessly well prepared and well delivered projects. And from a business perspective, that's 101, isn't it? Right, understanding my risks and knowing what my client wants, that inherently means I can deliver it more efficiently and more cost effectively. It means the client gets a better price, and it hopefully means that I might be able to retain and scope out a reasonable profit on the project as well. So but I really do feel it's horses for courses. I've said that before, but I do feel that there are absolutely project opportunities that squarely fit within the SME profile. And conversely, there's opportunities that, although we'd love to say, let's do that next big job and stretch ourselves sometimes, the reality is, no, that isn't the right kind of project or the right kind of business opportunity for us. And I think it's important that SMEs, manage that exposure and manage that client expectation appropriately. And by doing so, I think opportunities are beneficial all around.
Well, you're all flying the flag brilliantly for SMEs today, so congratulations on that. But it'd be interesting to hear from you. We'll go to William and Charlotte on this. Some of the barriers and some of the challenges that you guys face in terms of those procurement processes. So what are those big barriers that the SMEs face in entering those public sector procurement processes? You first on this one, William.
Again, speaking for our own experience, we've kind of learned our way through the process over the last 10 years, but undoubtedly I've had to enhance resources and levels of expertise within the business to adhere to, some valid requirements, but some quite onerous requirements that are out there for SMEs to, achieve compliance and be pre-qualified for public sector works. The new Procurement Act, from what I understand, is kind of easing some of them barriers and them ceilings, and I think that's a positive move. And is there more we could do? I think there is, yes, but I'm also considerate that public sector procurement and where our taxpayers' money goes needs to be auditable and needs to be looked after and cared for and apportioned correctly. Absolutely, and so inherently that does mean that there are levels of criteria and standards and processes that need to be met. So I think it's a fine balance, if I could say that, Tom. And sometimes I think for SMEs starting the journey of public sector work, it can be rightly a little bit daunting and sometimes a little bit off-putting. But from our perspective, we've found that our ability to bring along our supply chain on this journey with us has been invaluable. And so our ability to share, resources or advice, sometimes take the mystery out of it. I'll speak, for instance, with a really good family business, flooring contracting business we work with, and encouraging them to go through elements of accreditations, with the long-term goal of it can open up more opportunities for you. It was a bit of a hard sell, if I'm honest, to them. But once we took the mystery out of it, and once we actually helped them and said, look, here's some support and here's some kind of guidance and structure, it's been a nice journey to see them as a business kind of, and as an SME, rise up and seek opportunities and harvest opportunities within the public sector. And I think that's the story for most SMEs as well. But I really do encourage our public sector clients to obviously follow the processes that are put there, of course, but sometimes do reach out and see if there is that little bit of misunderstanding that sometimes scares off an SME, and really make it a more enticing and realistic opportunity is the bottom line. Yeah.
Charlotte, I can see you nodding away there at the bottom of my screen, and so it looks familiar for you.
Yeah, to echo that, when you are starting out, and let's say you're an MSME, sometimes it can be quite literally the language that's a barrier. You don't understand it, or you don't know it all yet. You don't have the overhead to necessarily afford to pay for these big bid teams, but the works in front of you are exactly, they're your sweet spot. So whether that's the contract type, procurement type, whatever it is, we've certainly found that working with a framework provider, they're super proactive. They ensure that you understand the latest legislation, the contract changes, the route to markets, whatever it is. So the framework providers aren't necessarily just there for the client, and they're not just there for the organizations within them. Kind of to lean on them, it breaks down some of that mystery, gets rid of some of the language and those misunderstandings. So otherwise you can think it's too big and too scary for you, and actually just opening up that and just going, I'm not quite sure on that front. Can you talk to me a bit about that? There's no kind of subservience in it. At the end of the day, the clients are looking for a really compliant procurement route, and you as a contractor are going, I can do that work and I'll be great at it. So having that middleman can be really, really helpful to leverage as well. And I think I would encourage anyone on the call to kind of lean on those framework providers, get them to earn their fee, but also lean on their expertise. There's amazing people within those organizations that massively help. I think one of the other barriers that I would say we as an organization look at, or sometimes find, is making sure that procurement routes are designed for SMEs. So lots that are appropriately sized. For example, I'm not going to go after a lot that's from 0 to 15 million, because I cannot ever do 15 million. So immediately I'm out. And then when there's 2 spaces secured or reserved for SMEs, no one's going to be filling those, because if they're getting up so they can deliver £15 million projects and numbers of them, because often you've got to demonstrate 3 areas where you've been able to do it doesn't make sense. So I think simplifying things, making sure that they're right procurement routes and they're designed appropriately, again, simplifying the tender requirements as well, which I think, with PA23 coming in, it does help. It's just as compliant. And I think, as an SME, we kind of echoes Luke's point from earlier on. We go after every opportunity. We don't, go after every opportunity, but every opportunity we go after, we are really careful. We evaluate that bid. I don't have 20 people sat around doing nothing, waiting to write bids. We make sure that the opportunities that we go after are our resources best deployed, as I'm sure every other kind of responsible business does as well. So if we don't think we can win it, we won't bid it. Which then when you learn later down the line, someone just like you from around the corner did win it and did bid it, you think, we could have done that. So it can be really disappointing to learn that latterly, when, as I say, either the understanding wasn't quite there, or maybe the tender was just very, very complicated. So I think that's another one that as an SME, you have to really make sure you're getting return on investment on anything that you do look at. And there's lots of projects that we think that would be perfect for us, but what's the point if the tier ones are going after it, because they're just going to wipe us clean when it comes to commercials. And whilst we're competitive, that 1 or 2% and all of the big fancy words and all the people and the resources they can throw at it, we just don't have a chance. So yeah.
Yeah, completely. Luke, you wanted to add something there?
I was just nodding away and thinking. I think the biggest barriers to SMEs are, I'm going to say something controversial. It's things like direct award and sort of coming out of your comfort zone. And we're noticing that, probably shouldn't say this on the Pagabo call, but even the Pagabo framework as an example, 80% of it is a direct award. And I think actually we're, speaking for myself, but probably the rest of the people on the panel, are sitting in the wings ready to competitively bid for anything that comes out and that's of opportunity to us. And I think actually, while I do understand that direct award is great, you can get somebody that you've worked with that's a known resource that can jump onto a site, but I do think that ability just to go, and the change in the current rules are going to change this, but the reality is we will be able to turn around and say, if you don't decide to go with the person you've always used because they've always delivered something good, or you wait for something to go wrong with them or for the service level to drop or something like that before you decide to change, I think if you were to go, let's just test the market a little bit, because there's quite a few of us in Nottingham doing what I do, and we're all sort of competing against each other and we all get on reasonably well. And I think actually, if you were to open up the market a little bit and allow people to bid on it, that will be just allow you to get a few more SMEs out there, really, because it will just generate a bit more competition all around and probably bring costs down overall.
Well, excellent stuff. And what we're going to do now is we're going to turn the mirror back on our audience and put a poll question to them, which is asking our audience how confident they are that they engage effectively with local SMEs. And this, I think, will be very interesting for our panel to see what our audience thinks about how well they engage themselves. So 1 being not confident at all, and 4 being very confident. And if we could just give that one another couple of seconds, please, before we close it. So interestingly, we've got 80% of them sitting in the middle there, saying sort of they're relatively confident they engage local SMEs effectively. But only 1 of the people that actually voted on this said that they feel that they are very confident in how they do it. So interesting to see that people within the audience and representing local authorities do have that feeling that they can probably engage with SMEs a little better. We're going to move now on to our final section of the questions that we have here, which I'm going to talk now around sort of digital platforms and transparent frameworks. We'll go to you first on this one, Charlotte, but it'd be good to hear from both William and Luke at some point on this. Can digital platforms, all those transparent frameworks we just talked about, better connect local SMEs with public sector buyers and ensure fair access to opportunities?
I think, yeah, when anything with tech, if it works, if it positively performs, technology can obviously improve, and digital platforms can obviously improve efficiency, whether that's across our day-to-days and our day-to-day work streams, which, let's be honest, is a better result for everybody if you can gain back some time. For an SME, I know, talking about the accreditations and the other things you need to do, it gives us more time to focus on things like developing the real benefits and improving our business operations and performance that ultimately the buyers are going to benefit from as well, or could improve our ability to perhaps look at 1 or 2 more of those opportunities, rather than spending time on kind of like box ticking and form filling. So in terms of a lot of the platforms that are out there, for me, I know hopefully with the public pipeline that was promised as part of the Procurement Act 23, hopefully that's going to provide us all with a lot more visibility. I think that's a really critical one for any organisation actually, but particularly an SME. Visibility of that allows you to better align your resources and redeploy those most effectively. I might have an opportunity land and think, yeah, I'm going to bid that, but actually that's because I don't know that something superbly perfect for organisation is going to land in 3 weeks' time. If I had that visibility, going back to the horses for courses, I might say, oh, this opportunity over here isn't right, but the one that's coming up in a minute is. And we don't have resource that around if an opportunity just kind of like falls out of the sky. So I think digital can definitely help with that. It can streamline that entire process, both kind of buyer and supplier side. In terms of frameworks, I mean, I think everything is because of the need for compliance, there is, they are pretty transparent in terms of the procurement routes, the contract types, the award criteria and evaluation criteria as well. And I think with these framework providers and platforms that are used, at present, kind of, you can't force a client to procure, for example, if I use Pagabo, you can't force a client to use your platform. They can still use Intend or wherever else they want to go. But the benefit that we have seen is that by going through something like a Pagabo, then there's someone from Pagabo side also making sure that those responses are getting through, that someone's responding in good time, and all the things they should be doing, so that there's just a better procurement process from end to end, really.
Excellent. And William, you alluded to some of the platforms that you use around social value and net zero earlier on. But in terms of getting your access to the opportunities, how can those platforms that you guys use help you with that?
Yeah, I mean, technology's out there, and these platforms are available now, and so we're kind of all learning about them, and we get reference to them and directed to them sometimes by clients. Log on to this portal, and this job will be coming out from this portal. Make sure you don't miss it, which is all great stuff. But I think Charlotte brought up a good point there, and frameworks have a real opportunity here, and I think Pagabo are driving it forward, and there's more to do. But can we utilise a digital platform where SMEs are categorised accurately and effectively on KPIs that public sector procurement clients want to assess or procure or review in total? And I often think we do a lot of work through frameworks, and there's an inordinate amount of elements that we follow up on. So we're touching on a monthly basis how project deliveries are going. We're kind of temperature testing relationships and client satisfaction. And there's a lot of data and information that is going to be quite valuable if sliced and diced and presented in the right fashion to the public sector clients, or any client really. And that might be value size, that might be location, that might be what specialist element of construction are you? Are you a general contractor? Are you healthcare proficient? Are you life sciences proficient? And I think by kind of subcategorizing and pulling that data together, the technology is already there, isn't it? So a digital platform really can then put the right SME in touch with the client whose needs are going to be best delivered by them. And I think as long as that evolves and continues, so we do see a number of portals and, as you said, Charlotte said, Intend systems out there, and clients move towards a public procurement process where it's open to everyone. The only concern that we do have with sometimes when it's an open procurement policy is SMEs let themselves down sometimes. We talk about sticking to the right kind of business and knowing your business and going over after that right kind of business. I mean, our experience has been sometimes that open procurement approach harvests interests with the best will in the world, the right kind of interest. We want work and we want to deliver it, but for some particular projects with no real experience or understanding of what that project needs, and all of a sudden it's a race to the bottom and lowest price wins, and you kind of think that balance that we see in today's procurement world, which is quality price split, it is I guess the best antidote for that, really. But I've seen progress with it. Years ago, and I'll go back many years, we would hear of projects only when they're finishing or through the grapevine. Today, there is a lot more visibility of project opportunities out there. And I think as long as that continues to evolve, it will create the platform for SMEs to thrive and ultimately partner up with the right kind of client on the right kind of project. And I think it really comes back to that. But yeah, a real opportunity for, the likes of Pagabo to take that next level of digital transformation in the procurement sector and cut and slice and dice that information to suit the procurement or the purchasing client's requirements.
Super. Well, thank you guys for your input on that one. We've had such a good conversation that we are rapidly running out of road in terms of the time that we have available today. But it'd be good to hear from each of you an example of a project where your organisation has been able to deliver that exceptional value as an SME, and what in particular it was from your organisation's strength that you brought to that job that made it so worthwhile. So we'll go from the bottom of my screen to the top. So we'll go to you first, Charlotte.
Okay. There's a lovely local project that we worked on. It was a local trust. The project was Shoemakers Museum in Clark's Village and Street. And this was, the concept behind this was it was designed and developed to celebrate 200 years of local shoemaking. It's a history, it's been in the area, and it's a huge source of pride in the area. Kind of anybody who lives in a certain town knows of it, and they've probably had someone who's worked there, or their grandfather, whoever else. So lots of eyes on this one. They'd had a London architect design the space, and then the project stakeholder was the one who was really seeking out local supply chain. So they'd had some initial costs prepared by a firm that their London architect recommended, which we know happens quite a lot. People work with people and get those feasibility studies done. And then the client was hugely disappointed when they realised how much of it they wouldn't be able to afford, how much of that design they'd fallen in love with that they couldn't necessarily, they didn't have the wedge there to front it. So I guess the benefit we were able to bring was, one, not paying London prices in Somerset, so reduced travel, reduced accommodation, immediately gave them more working capital to actually afford some of these elements that had to been taken out of scope. And also, because we're using those local suppliers, it's on our doorstep. We're going to tell our friends and families to go there, and we want to put our, pin our badge on it. We work tirelessly, not saying we don't ordinarily, but then it's easier to engage and collaborate with those local stakeholders and those local supply chain partners when they're equally as invested in a project with you and the community benefits that it's going to bring. So it really was a team effort in ensuring the most kind of bang for their buck, because every single person that we work with wanted to be able to kind of be loud and proud about it. So it was great to, you don't have to even entice anybody. They're willing to do that extra bit of legwork to deliver the best possible design. And then there's obviously the local effect of that. So that our project manager, there was the main contractor there wasn't quite ready for us, so we had to push our program back by a few hours. The guys are fine to do it; they don't mind. They'll just come back and work a little bit later on in the day. The day of their press launch, the lights were on a timer, and they suddenly thought, "Oh Christ, we're going to need lights on at a different time of the day. We need to do something about this." Absolute panic mode because they couldn't work out how to make this thing work. Our project manager's talking them through it. They still weren't comfortable. She just goes over there, sorts it all out, kind of say she saved the day, But you can just pop in, you can see them, you can wish them luck, you can see the whites of their eyes and see how happy you've made it and made their day a lot easier. So I think, whilst they're not unique strengths, they're just really easy, tangible examples to show why, an SME is able to do that rather than the London firm couldn't necessarily get down there at the nip of a quick phone call. So.
Yeah, Clark's Village, a well-known stopping point on the way to Glastonbury.
It's a museum.
very, very, very familiar with it. Luke, from you, just a brief example of a project where you guys have brought those unique SME strengths to the table.
I'm going to use Eastglade, which was a £15 million social housing scheme that we were the project managers and commercial services for. And there's a couple of reasons. We were very unfortunate, and it was quite a sad situation where the main contractor went under during the actual construction of the project, which immediately led to panic, which everyone was getting. Obviously, bills weren't going to get paid to various subcontractors and things like that. So we cancelled the client. We turned up to site with padlocks we quickly bought from Wick, so that any sort of purchasing protocols just straight on our cards and bought them. Managed to lock the site down, managed to get in touch with the local police, get everyone to make sure the site's being managed, and got control of the situation a lot easier than we could if we had lots of barriers in place to actually control that site situation. And then the sort of the follow-on niceties of that was we were able to support the client with understanding the procurement rules of that there are national guidelines, but in terms of the nuances of that particular council and that particular council's procurement guidelines, to bring a new contractor on board, we piecemealed the project to make it work, and we supported it from a basis of getting that scheme back on site within sort of a month, which is sort of huge in that particular industry when you're talking the values that we're talking about. The niceties of that, and sort of the other side of the coin, is because we knew the area, we knew it's a large rat run with ASB, and we were able to, as part of the project, improve the lighting on a particular walkway. And where we were designing the back of our houses, we supported the client with putting in sort of natural barriers. So I would call it defensive hedging. So things like hawthorn, things like that. So actually, you're still adding a character to the site, adding sort of value to it with biodiversity, but providing natural defence from people that may necessarily break in or utilise it as a rat run as part of the situation that was going on there. But the nicest part of this particular project was just because we knew it, and we'd been there and sort of been walking around the site from our tender perspective. There was a house and a family that used to plant wildflowers all along the edge, and they've been doing it for about 15 years. So actually, this abandoned brown site in the middle of Nottingham had a really nice stretch of wildflower planting all the way along one section. So rather than coming along and stripping it out and just decimating it and putting something new in, we actually took that idea and ran it the entirety of the site. So now we have this beautiful wildflower section running all the way along the site, which has been approved by. We've had the maintenance team down, so they're not going to turn up and just trim the lot. We've had the conversations to actually make sure it works. So it's little things like that make a difference, because then the community are actually engaged, that we're thinking about things that we know that particular footpath is horrendous for ASB, and putting more lights on, but tailoring them so they're not annoying everybody, and putting PCSOs on. It's that project that actually really just shows how important an SME is and that local knowledge is for certain schemes. And I appreciate time's going on to stop chatting, otherwise I'll talk to you on.
No, it's clearly a project you're very passionate about, and you could go on about all day. So.
Any of them, to be honest.
William, yeah, briefly from you, please, a project where you guys have managed to use that SME exceptional value.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I appreciate we're up against time. The project, as many of them are sitting on our website, but the one that jumps to mind is Chelsea and Westminster. It was a project that was in trouble with the client and their previous chosen procurement route. And again, it goes back for horses for courses, and £16 million wasn't really an important job to the tier one contractor in charge of it, but for us it really was a grade A job. And after a period of time, we were engaged, asked to come in, and again, back to that agility and that flexibility of an SME. We had a team already available. We brought them in, and I think the comment I received was we'd got more done in 2 months than had been achieved in the previous 10 months. And that's not to badmouth people. I think it really is just to bring forward what the benefits of an SME are and where they can be achieved. And so, yeah, in a nutshell, we've got the job back on track. We pulled it forward to a program and into a budget that was the client's aspirations and previously looked unachievable. And I think that's it in a nutshell, really. That ability to deliver the impossible sometimes, but also in an ethos and a manner and an approach which embodies collaboration, relationships, and one of them projects that was just a real pleasure, not only to work on but to be involved in, and that went from site right the way through to senior management and the CEO of Chelsea and Westminster, who I met a couple of times. So.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much to all of you for your contributions today. As you've rightly alluded to, we have run very short on time here, so we just want to wrap up with a final poll from our audience just to check how well our team have done. I feel like I probably know the answer to this one already, but how knowledgeable do you now feel about local procurement and working with SMEs? This is where it becomes quite nervous for the panel, because if it's gone down, we've really not done a very good job today. We've just chatted for an hour, which has been lovely, but it may not have done the job we needed to. If we could close that poll now, please. Super, good stuff. There we go. So we are 100% of attendees now feel either very confident or particularly confident around the value of SMEs and the power of them in local procurement. Just pop another poll up on screen now to hear from whether you'd like to hear from our regional team about how Pagabo can help you access SMEs for your upcoming procurement. But that is unfortunately all we've got time for today. So thank you very much for attending. We've had another really good group of attendees today, a very engaged audience. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. If you have signed up for today's Pagabo Live, you're now part of the Pag Live community, which means you'll receive a link for all of our upcoming sessions. There's also a newsletter coming out around a week after each of the Pagabo Live sessions with a recording of the webinar in video and podcast form, along with further insights from the team. We did get a couple of audience questions come in throughout today, so what we'll try and do is make sure they get answered within that content as well. You'll also be able to claim a CPD credit for today's session. You'll be receiving an email from the Pagabo team in the coming days on how you can do that. Our next Pagabo Live is actually next week on Wednesday, 3rd of December. We're going to be breaking down tomorrow's autumn budget a week on. We're going to be finding out what it means for the public sector and bringing in some of the built environment's leading names to discuss the impact of that budget. All that last to be said is thank you again for your attendance today. Thank you to William, to Luke and Charlotte for their contributions throughout. And we hope to see you all again next time on Pagabo Live. Thank you.